As a young child, to me, it was a normal living day to day. There was a few things that were different, but I didn't really understand the meaning of it until much later when my parents had applied to leave the country, that things got a little, I guess you can call it weird. But, as I gotten older and looked back in my life, there were some stuff that were hard. And as a family that decided not to stay in Cuba and asked to leave, there were stuff that was, we were considered what they call their gusanos, which means worms, meaning that you don't like the system and you're not worthy of living in Cuba. The one thing that really stuck out in my mind, but I never really got the gist of it, was every time Fidel Castro was going to have a speech, one of those big speeches that he did, like 3-4 hours, 5-6 hours in the Plaza de la Revolucion, because we live like not too far from there, and I would say about 5 to 7 blocks from it. That radius of apartment buildings always had a military personnel coming into the building, but because we were so close and we had a balcony, we all had to have our doors open, and the military person will come in and out of the apartment. I guess that was for prevention of assassinations, maybe setting off bombs. I don't know what they were thinking of, but they wanted control of the people that lived there. So I do remember being a small child and seeing these kinds of people walking in and out of the apartment at certain times. And if you know anything about Fidel Castro, he had to make big speeches and I'm so good, and this is great, and so his speeches were not the half hour, 20 minutes. They were going on and on and on and on and on. And so, but again, like I said, as a small child, I just took it as another person walking in and out of my apartment. It just, to me, was like maybe a party kind of a thing. The other thing that also later on I understood was he made some kind of rules and regulations about almost everything and anything in your life. One of them was that when a child reached the age of 7, they were not allowed to have cow's milk. Yeah, I have no idea what the reasoning was. So the only thing that was available to me was condensed milk and powdered milk. Somehow I was not able to drink either of the two. My stomach just wasn't handling. I just got very sick. So my parents had to figure out how to get me milk. So the one thing that they were able to do was, we had family on the countryside. And let me just back up a little bit to explain what the connection is. He also introduced the rationing book system. Probably your Gma knows about it, living in Czechoslovakia, and anybody that lived in the communist country probably knows about that. What it is they would take a survey of your family household. So my household was my mom, my dad, and me, 3 of us. So they decided that X amount of stuff was allowed to you per week. So in other words, for example, white rice, something that we Cubans eat a lot of, we were only allowed to have like maybe half a pound per week. And if you know, half a pound does not lead to a lot. Beans were like maybe half a pound. Coffee was like 16 ounces. Eggs for 3 family was maybe 6 eggs, 8 eggs per week. So once I turned 7, the milk was not given to me. So my parents had to think of how to get it for me. Part of the rationing system also was that the shoes that you can buy at the store would be like maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Clothing, maybe once a month. If we could find material to make clothing, that was like a bolt per, I think it was maybe once or twice a month. So what my parents did was anything and everything that we were allowed, but we really didn't need, we would get. And then they would make trips to our family out in the countryside. And because they still had a small plot of land, a small land, and they would grow different kinds of fruits, and they had animals, they provided us stuff with that, and we would provided them with the shoes, the clothing, the materials, anything that we didn't even use. Sometimes also, like, for example, the sugar. If we were allowed enough and we had enough, we would bring some of that to them. So it was a bartering system, kind of a thing. So that's how I was able to get milk. My mother would bring it back. She would keep enough for me for the week. And then in the black market, you would sell all the extra stuff. I don't know if you've heard of the big trichinosis disease of the pigs in Cuba. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but it was in the mid-60s. So they declared that the pigs were dirty, and then they said, you have to kill all the pigs and everything. A lot of the people in the countryside were like, "Are you crazy? My pigs are fine. We've taken care of them. They're all being seen by whatever." So a lot of the people didn't kill them or anything like that. But one time, my mother and I went to the countryside to get our usual milk and stuff like that. And one of the cousins said to my mother, we just slaughtered a pig, and we do have a piece for you. Do you want to take the chance in bringing it back? And my mother says, of course, I would. I mean, why not? It's food, it's meat. They have to figure out how to bring it back. We always carried those 25-gallon jugs that you carry around for liquids and stuff like that. So what they did was that they wrapped the pig in some kind of paper, whatever they had, and then they wrapped it again in plastic. They put it at the bottom of the container, and then they fill it up with milk. And that's how my mother and I carried it. Now, you got to understand that from the countryside to Havana, we had to take 2 buses. So the one bus goes into the main terminal, and then we had to switch to another bus. Well, it so happened that day, our luck was that as we approached the bus terminal, we were told to stay seated in the buses because they were going to go through the bus looking for contraband. My mother looks at me, and she just like goes like this to my hand, and she says, "Don't say a word, just sit quietly." And so I did. So they come to us, and this big 6-foot military skinny ass guy, says to my mother, "What is that?" And she goes, "Oh, that is milk." And she opens the container to show him. And she had a piece of paper saying that because I was allergic to the regular milk, that I could get this kind of milk. And he says he goes like this to take a peek at the milk and everything. He looks at her and looks at me, and he said, "Why so much?" And she goes, "Well, she drinks a lot of milk during the week, and then I give it to my mother, and I give it to my nephew." And he's like one of those concerns kind of a thing, and he goes, "Fine, go ahead, just close it." My mother let out such a big sigh, because he could have been a pain in the ass and put his hand in the milk to try to look for it, and then ruin the milk just by putting his hand in there. And if they found the pork at the bottom, my mother would have been thrown in jail, and I don't know what would have happened to me. In general, it was that you had access to stuff, and you could sell it or trade it. You trade it, or you sold it. But you had to do it like on the lowdown. Really, you couldn't specify, "Hey, I have sugar. Hey, I have this and that." It had to be like word of mouth. Somebody that my mother knew she made birthday cakes. And of course, to make birthday cakes, what do you need? You need sugar, you need eggs, you need flour, and you need milk. So my mother, when she had enough of that stuff left over after she did whatever she needed to do, she would give it to this person, and this person would make my birthday cakes when it came around to do the birthday cakes. So that's another way of helping out. I help you, you help me, and we'll see what happens. So like I said before with the guavas, we will make those desserts and we will sell those desserts. And that's how we made a little bit more money, so we can the next time buy the stuff that we needed to get from the store. So it was a circle of you buy, I buy, we trade, I make desserts, you buy desserts, somebody else did this and the other thing. So that's how that, as far as I knew, it worked. I'm sure there was other things going on, but like I said, I was only, I don't know, 7 years old, 8 years old when, I lived in Cuba till 1973, and I was born in 62. So it was only 10 years. So the first few years when you're little, you really don't understand anything. Only when I really started going to school that things, progressed to that point where I understood a little more how different we were from other people in the neighborhood. We were not revolutionaries. We didn't belong to the party. We were not interested in the party. So it seems as if you talked a lot, people will know if you were or were not revolutionary. That's what I mean by being different. One of the examples that I can give you is when I was going to school, we all wore uniforms, and the uniforms of the youth member party was, at the time for my grade, was blue skirt with a great shirt, and then we had a scarf that was half red, half white, and that would show that I was part of the youth movement, of the communist youth movement. Well, my parents got really upset about it. They didn't want me to wear it or anything like that. But the problem was that if I did not wear it at school, I could have been in trouble. I could have had a hard time in school, because they knew that if you didn't wear that, you were not for the party. So that's what I mean by being different. It's nothing CY or anything like that. I mean, yes, we do have different ethnicities in Cuba. We have Chinese, we have Black people, we have mulattoes. But to me, that was not what was different. What was different was being a communist person or a non-communist person, revolutionary and stuff like that. Things that you had to watch and things that you had to be careful in saying, because it could give you away. Things now are a little bit more relaxed. People are talking a lot more and stuff like that. But back then, you have to also remember the Bay of Pigs invention happened in 61. The missile crisis happened in 62. The Cuba being serviced by Russia. Sorry, Russia being our great father, because they brought all the stuff and we were depending on them. They didn't want to rock the boat, because this is the great leader, this is the great person that's going to get us out of this of the Batista regime and the all the bad that influences, and the United States is too much influence on us. So that's what the problem was. We had the city was had pieces of area where the communists had party members that were like, for example, my building, you had one person that would report to the Socialist Party of the goings on in the apartment building, who was having what and who was visiting who, and who was talking about the government, or who was planning to do anything. Sort of, I'll get the name soon. Luckily, the person that was that in my building was somebody that we knew and we were very friendly with. So kind of like, turned the other eye sometimes and didn't say much of anything. And it served her right, because when we left, she needed to exchange a few things in both departments, so we were able to help her and she helped us at the same time. But that's another story for later if you want me to explain to you. I don't remember the first few years of school, to tell you the truth, but a lot of the fourth and fifth grade that I was there for, that I could remember, the topics of conversation was Batista was bad, the Soviet Union is great, United States is a meddling, troublesome country. And believe it or not, in fifth grade, one time we had a demonstration coming into our classroom. A couple of again, military personnel come in with M16s in their hands. And that day's lesson was how to take the M16s apart, clean them, and put them back together, and how to hold the machine. So I was like, okay, how is that going to help me? But then when you think about it, it's like, oh, they're training us to, join the military when you're older. Military was 15 for the boys. Girls, I think, was 16. I'm not sure, but I never made it because I left that when I was 10, like I said. But yeah, it was, my parents were a little like, what the, with this thing? But you have to think of it that way. We had, we did some field trips. And again, field trips are for the good of the party, of remembering our history with how Fidel came to power, and to remember our heroes. But of course, our heroes were not what you would think of, like George Washington and Jefferson or anything like that. There was one guy called Camilo Cienfuegos. He, although he was a part of the movement and part of his group and everything, for what I understood, he became disillusioned with the way that Castro was going with this whole thing. And he had an accident on a helicopter that was transporting him somewhere. And he was lost in the Bay of Havana. And one of the field trips that we used to go to was on the anniversary of this accident, was to go to the place to honor him and throw flowers into it and the whole thing. Again, as I was little and understood that, to me was a free day. We were going out of school, we're going to do this thing, and we're going to celebrate this man, whatever. So as I got older, you start seeing it, you start understanding that, oh, indoctrination time. So that's what the schooling was. It was mostly, yes, you learned some reading, you learned some writing, you did some math and everything. But basically, from my memory, is like, it was not that total what you would do in this country. You learned a few things here and there, but it was mostly inverted towards the great nation of the Soviet Union, that United States was bad. We got rid of a bad regime, and this is the way it's going to, and Castro is providing for you, and he's the great father. The funny thing is about Che Guevara is that my mother used to work at an imprint company that printed, the magazines Bohemia and the books and stuff like that. And Jose's title was maximum leader of education or something to that effect. And so he used to come to my mother's job a lot, to oversees the printing and oversees all that stuff. And she did get to talk to him a few times. But my 15 minutes of fame is that his daughter was in my pre-K class. I do have a picture of her somewhere. So I did know her. So, but again, when you think about it, some people has said to me that, oh, well, those 15 minutes of fame, you should be ashamed of that. And I was like, what? we were 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, having playtime and all that stuff. I didn't meet him per se. I never went to our house. My mother did. My mother, because of her job and stuff like that.
How were you able to escape Communist Cuba?
One of the people that I was telling you about, family, friends, and everything, the husband was my father's friend from the university where they used to go to. He was one of, I think, 3 or 4 brothers. So everybody knew each other. His wife used to work for the United Nations branch of UNICEF. So she was privy to a lot of information. And when my parents decided to apply to leave the country, that's when we lost everything. So now we were under scrutiny about everything. My friend, my mom's friend, my dad's friend's wife would tell us that, okay, I'm jumping around. Countries decided that they were going to issue visas for a future flight, and they would open up what they call books. You would have to go to the embassy, get in line, and put your name down. Now, the thing was that it wasn't by family, it was by person. So my parents had to go and say, okay, a visa for Cecilio, a visa for Addys, and a visa for Addys. So that means that we need 3 visas to leave the country. This friend was able privy to know when the different countries were able to, they were going to open up the books. So she would tell us, hey, Switzerland is opening up next week. So my parents would get up in the morning, go there, but always not the first ones in line, because you didn't want to, arouse suspicions. So, but they always wanted to be like the first 50 people in line, because the first 50 people usually had a better shot in getting a visa than if you were in the hundreds. Understand? So she would tell us, oh, by the way, United States is opening up next week, so that we would go. My parents applied Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, Spain, United States, Peru, anybody that offered a possibility to put our names down, my parents went and put our names down. Spain was the first one that decided that they were going to take in 500 people. So 500 people were able to get their visas. Now, the problem, like I said to you, remember that I said to you that it was done by persons and not families? Okay. So say that we unfortunately were 500, 501, and 502, okay, for that visa that they were opening up. Well, guess what? One of us 3 would get the visa, the other 2 didn't. So you had to make a decision. Who was going? Or do you give up the seat and wait for the next time? And there were families like that there were 4, 5, 6 people in the family, and they were short 1, 2, or 3 visas, and they had to decide, what do we do? Because I was a girl, my parents, and because we were, low in the numbers, we never really faced that situation. But we knew of families that had boys. Remember what I told you, that the military started at 15? If they had a boy that was anywhere close to 15, 14, 13, 12 years old, and the visas were not enough for the whole family to go, usually the father would sacrifice himself and stay behind and let his wife and the kids go. This way, the boy was out of range for the military service. So you can just imagine how hard that was to make a decision. So going back to our point was that we received, okay, when you apply to leave the country, that you said that you want to leave the country, now you call what I called you before, we were gusanos. We were not a non-party members. We were against the system. So they would come to your place of living, whether the apartment, a house, or something, and they would take an inventory of everything that was in that house. 6 glasses, 7 pots, 1 bed, everything. And you better have everything when they came to inventory your house that you were leaving the house, because then you would have a problem. Doesn't matter if it was broken, but it had to be there. Okay. So and another thing was that it was said to a lot of the postal workers, where that if any letters that came from an embassy, it had to be given to the family in their hands. It could not be left in the post office box. That was another tactic for you to miss out on your interview, to be able to get the visas in order to get out. Understand? Luckily, my parents' postal worker that was on our route had been on our route for years and knew my parents and knew that my parents were on the lookout for a letter from an embassy. Whichever embassy was given the first, that's what we were looking for. So one day towards the end of October, late at night, like around 7:30, 8 o'clock, we hear a knock on our apartment door. And my parents open up, and it was the mailman, and he kind of goes like this to them. And he says, "Oh, I was in the neighborhood. I wanted to say hello, how things are going, what's going on." And my parents caught the rift, and he says, "Oh, would you like to come in and have some coffee? We just made some coffee." And as they were sitting down at the table and they were talking, he goes like this, takes out from his pocket a letter, and he just slides it over to them. And he says, "Well, you know what? It's a late date. I have to go to work tomorrow and everything. But it was nice seeing you again. I forgot that I had to do a few things. But hey, I'll see you around the neighborhood." He leaves. My parents watched him leaving the clothes, and I was asleep at this time. They opened up the letter, and sure enough, it was the letter from the Spanish embassy that we were part of the group offered visas, and we had to go X day for the interviews and everything. Mind you, my birthday is November 2nd, so it was a few days before, and they had already made plans to have a birthday party, and the cake was getting done and everything. They didn't say a word to me. They didn't say nothing. They hid that letter. So I had that party and the whole thing, and sometime in the middle, I think it was the middle of November, end of November, that's when their appointment was. So they go to the appointment, and they said, "Oh, yes, you're part of the group of 500. You need the 3 visas." "Yes, we do." "Okay, who's going?" We gave the name, blah, blah. It says, "Okay, your appointment for the inventory is X day," which was supposed to be like in December, before Christmas. And they say, "Okay, no problem, we'll have that." Now, mind you, I still don't know anything. They don't want to tell me anything, because as a child, you could be saying, "Oh my God, I'm going on a trip, and it's not, I'm leaving country." So they didn't want anything to be said just yet. Somehow the there you go, the committee person, it's called the committee. There's a committee, the group that checks out on everybody. Like I told you, she was friends with us and the whole thing. Somehow she found out that we were living, I guess, because as being part of the personnel, they get ideas and everything, and who's leaving, who's moving, and stuff like that. But she comes to our apartment, and she says to my parents, "I'm so glad that you have your visas. I'm not gonna forget you and everything. And I know that, we look at things differently, but, I have to live with what I have to live. But listen, I have a few things that are broken. Can you exchange with me?" So there was a couple of glasses that she had that was broken, so we gave her the new ones. The stove top that you cook and everything, there was one that was really like rusted or anything like that, so we exchanged that with her. So it was pretty funny that at the same time that she is believing in this government and stuff like that. And yes, she's following the rules and everything. She wants the good stuff, the new stuff. So that was it. Then the appointment came for them to come back and inventory the house mid December. They inventory everything, they count everything, whatever, and they said, okay, so everything is fine and everything, we're gonna close the apartment, meaning that we had to have packed everything that we were taking with us, and then they closed the apartment with everything inside, even our own property, anything that we're not able to take or anything like that. So the apartment sits closed for a while until they get it cleaned, and then they get another family in there. But we had to move in with my grandparents, my mom's parents, and they live in a 2-bedroom apartment. So can you imagine my grandmother, my grandfather, my cousin, my mother's nephew, my father, myself, and 5 people? No, actually 6 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. We had to do that for like 2 months, 2 weeks. So, and then the day came to live. We left January 4th in the afternoon. So we actually arrived in Spain in the morning hours of the 5th of January. And the 6th of January is it's a big deal in Spain because that's Little Christmas. And it's like, it's the Feast of the Three Magi. So we arrived, and as we were flying over, the captain goes, oh, look to the left side, and look to the right side, look at all these lights and the whole, it was all beautiful. It was things that I've never seen. So it was like, and you have to remember, we are only 500 people in a jumbo 747. All right, so this plane can carry a lot of people, and a lot of us, only about 300 were able to come in. They only gave visas for like 300, 350 people. So it's basically everybody can have a whole row of seats for themselves. And that's how we left. So we were prepared to leave anywhere.